Okay, so Job curses the circumstances of his birth. He asks, why died I not from the womb? So he's getting to the point where he is getting desperate and doesn't want to blame God, but he's now like, why didn't I just die before all this happened to me, right? So I read from the Bible and from the Reddit Hostess because I love their chapter summaries, their help. It's kind of mixed with like a little bit of quotes from gospel scholars, but then also quotes from general authorities. So lots of stuff happening here in chapter 3. So Job's grief is intensified now. So after this opened Job his mouth and cursed his day. So we're on verse 1. And cursed his day, and Job spake and said, let the day perish wherein I was born. I feel like I have had this same prayer. It's like I couldn't believe that I was born at this time, that I couldn't believe that this was like, how come I couldn't be born sooner? My parents came to the United States when I was 1, but I missed like the amnesty thing. And so I was not a documented person for so long. And I could not, even by the time that I tried to go to college, I could not, because I was not documented. And my parents told me, well, my mom told me, no, sorry, you cannot apply to colleges because you're not a legal resident nor citizen, and we are here illegally and we're not supposed to be. And I'm like, what? And I had always wanted to be an architect. And don't worry, I don't want to be an architect anymore. So I will not be going to school for that. But I know that like you could give me that hope, like, oh, you could still go to, yes, I know I can still go if I wanted to, but I don't want to be an architect anymore. And so I don't even know what I would go to school for. I'd probably go to school to be a therapist or something. Although I don't think I could handle that kind of responsibility or legal things, right? So anyway, so after, I'm just like an entrepreneur. So that's like what I am, like a ADHD entrepreneur. That's like, I love too many things. So anyway, after this opened Job his mouth. Okay, so verse 3, let the day perish wherein I was born, and the night in which it was said, there is a man child conceived. So he wanted to he wanted to end his life in the early miscarriage stage, is like at 10 weeks or something, when you find out that he's a boy. I get that, with some of the trials, you're just like, why am I still alive? Right. So but of course I haven't been in his situation, so I don't get it 100%, but I do feel for him. Right. And I can have empathy. Verse 4, let that day be darkness. Let not God regard it from above, neither let the light shine upon it. Let darkness and the shadow of death stain it. Let a cloud dwell upon it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. As for that night, let darkness seize upon it. Let it not be joined unto the days of the year. Let it not come into the number of the months. Lo, let that night be solitary. Let no joyful voice come therein. Let them curse it that curse the day, who are ready to raise up their mourning. Let the stars of the twilight therefore be dark. Let it look for light, but have none. Neither let it see the dawning of the day, because it shut not up the doors of my mother's womb, nor hid sorrow from mine eyes. Okay, see, so he is just really super sad. And for someone who has struggled with infertility and has had a miscarriage, to hearing this plea of this man who wished he would have died as a miscarried child, because of the life that he was able to live, and then the sorrow that he is feeling, that he would have rather not lived it, makes me sad. Because there's never an excuse to not want to live on this earth. There's no excuse that's good enough to not want to live here. There's so much possibility, there's so much hope, there's always Christ. But I have not been where he is, so these feelings are valid and these thoughts are valid for him to have. So I'm going to allow it, right? And that's all we can do. We can only just allow our friends and our family to have these thoughts, to have these feelings, because they need to move past them. And it does hurt to see loved ones suffer. I don't even know Job, but I can kind of relate also to a bunch of his pain, that he wants it to go away, that he wished he'd never lived so that he wouldn't have to experience this pain. So, but let's keep reading to see where things go, right? For him, what is his full story? Why did the knees prevent me, or why the breast that I should suck? For now should I have lain still and been quiet. I should have slept, then had I been at rest with kings and counselors of the earth, which built desolate places for themselves, or with princes that had gold, who filled their houses with silver, or as an hidden ultimately or as an hidden untimely birth I had not been, as infants which never saw light. And it's really sad because I also don't believe in abortion. Of course, I do not. I'm always pro-life, always. And so, and I think that is a good choice that women can make. Verse 17, there the wicked cease from troubling, and there the weary be at rest. There the prisoners rest together. They hear not the voice of the oppressor. The small and great are there, and the servant is free from his master. Wherefore is light given to him that is in misery, and life unto the bitter in soul, which long for death, but it cometh not, and dig for it more than for hid treasures, which rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they can find the grave. Why is light given to a man whose way is hid, and whom God hath hedged in? For my sighing cometh before I eat, and my roarings are poured out like the waters. For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me, and that which what I was afraid of is come unto me. I was not in safety, neither had I rest, neither was I quiet, yet trouble came. So it's true, you could see that he loved his family so much because of like the time that they would make tradition to like see each other every Sunday and have dinner, and they would trade houses, and it's like, what a cute family. And then like he had so much, he was really well off, and he had servants and tons of cattle and all that. He also had what was it? Oh, so he didn't have to suffer from like eating or wanting any kind of food or anything like that. And then, of course, he would do sacrifices for his kids, because just in case they were to sin, he was trying to protect them from that. And, I can kind of relate. I used to pay my brother's tithing when I was little because I didn't want him to go to hell. It's just cute, right? It's cute. Let's just keep it there. Anyway, I do not pay my brother's tithing anymore. I would not be able to afford it. So anyway, it is super hard to see somebody go through all this and then wish that they were never alive. So much so that they are wishing that they were aborted or that they were miscarried. So it is so deep. His suffering is so deep that he's going through. And Job expressed his wish that he had never been born, you know? Um, and so it is Satan. It's just easy to see how Satan has been working this, and Satan had predicted that Job would curse God. However, when brought to these lows, Job cursed the day and night. that he was born, but he did not and would not curse God. So I love that, you know. Um, Job then asked this question, wherefore is light given to him that is in misery, right? Job had light, not like an infant who never saw the sun. He was alive and aware. One Bible scholar said this of Job. He said, one of the grimmest aspects of this story is that Job never does teeter over the brink into madness, but rather faces his entire ordeal with eyes wide open. Even when utterly broken, he somehow retains not only his faith, but his sanity. End quote. Mike Mason, The Gospel According to Job. Yeah, that is amazing, because it is easy to lose ourselves and allow the insanity to take over. But we know better, you know, and sometimes we are able to see what we know better, and sometimes we just are not, and we need extra help, which is fine. So Job then admitted the thing that he greatly feared, right? Because all parents greatly fear that, especially if you love your family in the way that that Job loved his. Now you might be thinking, well, I love my family. You know, I'm not trying to argue who loves their family more, but when you love your family, something that really that you fear is that they die, right? And so all of these verses together help us really understand that Job was truly in the deepest valleys. His body and soul was mourning and just like so depressed, like deepest depression, right? Even a perfectly upright man could be brought to these depths. And we have to remember that, because sometimes we think, oh, well, you know, he we might think, oh well, he knows he's not experiencing depression, but like literally he could be, and he most likely is. Okay, the Come Follow Me schedule skips chapters 4 to 11, so we're done with chapter 3, but we wanted to just read really quick chapters 4 to 11 summaries, okay, just so that we have something to know as we're going. So Job's friend Eliphaz then speaks to Job and points out how good and righteous Job had been. But Job was not brought to these low levels. Eliphaz decides that Job must have sinned, for whoever perished being innocent, right? Certainly the righteous do not suffer like this. Now, this is something that we all can have as an experience, or we judge others because it's like, oh, they had this hard thing happen to them. And instead of this hard thing happening to them, we uh, assume that it's because they were not righteous. And that's so wrong, because we know that righteous people can still have bad things happen to them. Therefore, so it says, therefore, God must be correcting Job, for happy is the man whom God correcteth. So Job could despise not thou the chastening of the Almighty. So Eliphaz's friend finally says something. Hey, this might be because you did something wrong, because you sinned. Not a good way to open your mouth, buddy. So then Job chapter 6 and 7 talks about Job responded by explaining that Eliphaz's judgments upon Job were only making Job's suffering greater. Yeah, he had already lost so much and was in constant pain, but now he was being accused of sinning against the God he loved so much. Instead, pity should be shown to the suffering. Yep. Let's keep our mouth shut when people are suffering, and don't try to invent things that they've done when we don't know things that they've done. Then Job chapter 8, Job's friend Bildad then speaks and tells Job that his words are like a strong wind. So he was rebuking Job for rebuking Eliphaz. Bildad asks, doth God pervert judgment, or doth the Almighty pervert justice? Or in other words, Job must have done something to deserve this punishment. Again, this is something that we do as humans. I don't know why we think this. So what's interesting about this is that we know that these friends were wrong, because we are shown the conversation between the Lord and Satan. What a great lesson to not declare judgments upon others. So true, because we do not know what people are going through, and we can't just judge and say like, you're sinning, that's why this is bad things happening to you, or you did this and that's why this bad thing's happening to you, or you didn't do this, right? It doesn't matter. We shouldn't be judging people that way. Okay, then Job chapters 9 and 10. Kind of the summary for that is that Job responds and agreed by saying, I know it is so of a truth. Job believed that God rewards the righteous, and he acknowledged that he had been broken with a tempest, and his days are swifter than a post, meaning a runner. So Job was saying that his life that was once so good had now quickly become unbearable, and it had happened so fast. If Job could, he would speak to if Job could, he would speak with God in the bitterness of his soul and say to him, do not condemn me. And he would wonder why thine hands have made me and fashioned me together round about, yet thou dost destroy me. And hast thou not poured me out as milk and curdled me like cheese? Job was not cursing God, but he was wondering why such suffering was coming to him. While his friends had concluded that Job must be deserving of these things, Job only was wondering why. Um, so his friends are like, hey, you must have sinned and you deserve it. Like, what? Like, what kind of friends are you guys? Like, we thought you were good friends at the beginning, and now we've decided that you are no longer good friends. And then Job chapter 11, Job's third friend Zophar then speaks, and he was the most arrogant of all the friends. Great. He told Job that he was a man full of talk. Oh, good. That's what we want to hear from our friends. You're all talk, no action. And then insulted Job and called him empty-headed. Oh boy. Like to be mocked by your friends has got to be a new level of like sadness for Job, because it's it's not something easy. Like you do not want to be mocked by your friends, and your friends were all that you even had left, because your wife was telling you to betray God and curse him. But then all he had left was his friends, and now his friends are gone too. They're just off the deep end. And here's the thing with friends: we are also getting whispers from the adversary, but it is our job to stop the whispers from being voiced. Because if we voice those whispers to our friends, like these friends that Job had, they didn't have to say, hey, you deserve this, or you must have sinned. They didn't have to say that. That was what Satan was whispering to say to Job from his friends. But we can block those when we can think like, that's a stupid thing to say to my friend because he's suffering right now. I shouldn't say, hey, it's probably because you sinned, or hey, you deserve this. And so like, I think his poor friends had good intentions at the beginning, because they gave him like 7 days. They just sat with him and didn't say anything. You can't say anything when your friend has just lost his whole, like all his kids, his grandkids, all his cattle, everything, his business, everything. And you're just going to tell him that it's because he sinned. Like, that's the dumbest thing. Even if he did, who cares? Like, just be with your friend and you don't have to say anything. So anyway, that is it for Job chapter 3. And then we did the synopsis for Job chapters 4 to 11. So then our next chapter that we're going to read is Job chapter 12, to see where we're going from there. Okay. Until Job chapter 12, stay strong, warrior.